Welcome, Guy, to Spain.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back in Spain.
Right. For us, it's a pleasure to welcome you as well. We like the first question for us. We know you've explored learning in depth. What is learning? If you had to define it.
What is learning? Oh, big question first. Right?
That's right.
Learning is getting better at something. Learning is an expansion of capacity, capability. And that might be to see things more clearly, to understand things more deeply, to be able to perform some skill more gracefully or more effectively. So it covers a whole range of different things. But
So everybody can learn?
Everybody can learn, and it's probably the ability to learn is probably the most important asset that we have, because it's the one thing that's never going to go out of date. All various skills might come and might go, technology changes, but one thing you can be sure of is that our ability to learn is always going to be our number one asset.
And do you think schools help or don't help?
I think schools, they mean to help, and for many children they do help, but you have to understand the different level of learning that schools are involved in. So some schools are very focused on the acquisition of knowledge and a kind of intellectual understanding. And I think most schools are reasonably effective, some more than others at that level. But I'm very interested in the capacity to learn itself. And some schools, certainly in my country, traditional schools, good schools, schools that get good examination results, have not been so good at helping to preserve and expand students' capacity to learn and their appetite for learning. Unfortunately, as people grow up, sometimes their confidence as learners and their skill as learners may be reduced as well as being expanded. And in some forms of traditional education, it's possible, unfortunately, to make students more passive, more dependent on their teachers, more timid, more frightened of making mistakes, and therefore less adventurous, more conservative in their approach to learning. So I think we're beginning to understand that schools affect children on a number of different levels. And if we are to prepare kids for the 21st century, the complex changes and uncertainties of the 21st century, we have to make sure that we're having a positive effect on all those different levels. And that's something a little new in education, and we're still learning how to do that really, really successfully.
I usually say that children start school, as you say, with a big appetite for learning, and they finish with a big obsession about passing tests.
Yeah.
So you think
exactly.
testing and the culture of exams are
in some ways, they, as I say, it depends on the different type of learning. You know, if you value the possession of facts and traditional understandings of mathematics or physics or Spanish history or whatever it might be, these things are important, they're valuable, but not if you teach them in a way that reduces children's curiosity and imagination and willingness to experiment and their sense of themselves as independent, confident, self-reliant learners. That's the big problem. So we just have to adjust what we're doing in schools. I think it's not a revolution, but it's a matter of a small evolution of teachers' behavior in schools and teachers' understanding of these different layers or levels of learning. If we can get that right, then I think we'll be able to really prepare kids for the 21st century and not maybe for the 19th century.
Which is the biggest challenge for a school? Changing the curriculum or changing the methodology the teachers teach?
I think the most important, well, they're both important. But for me, the biggest challenge is changing the methodology, changing the pedagogy in schools, because it's through the pedagogy, the way the teachers create a culture or a climate in the classroom that children develop, often unconsciously, these attitudes or habits of mind towards learning, which either makes them more curious and more courageous, or less curious and less courageous. So I think that's important. But obviously there is a huge question about what is the most important knowledge for children to have. My friend David Perkins from Harvard he poses the question in his latest book, what is it that we can confidently predict most young people are likely to need to know in order to flourish in the 21st century? And this is a question, it's a deep question, it's a difficult question. Is it really how to add fractions or some long forgotten historical event? Do those things still deserve their place in the curriculum? Or maybe there are other things that are a better preparation for life? Because for me, school is not just handing on the treasures of the past. More importantly than that is preparing people to live well in the future. So we have to think carefully both about the methodology and about the content and about the curriculum, I think.
And if you had to choose some changes in methodologies, which changes do you think are helping learning more nowadays?
I think the things we need to do are just help teachers realize how much they are, often unconsciously or unintentionally, creating I like to think of it like a current in the ocean, an undercurrent in the room, which is drawing children towards becoming more independent and more responsible, or more dependent and more only focused on passing the tests. And there are so many little aspects. The work that we've been doing, and a number of other groups around the world, is to just discover what these different cultural signifiers, cultural messages are. The decoration, the posters that you put on the walls of the classroom, the choices that you make about what to display of students' work, the language that you use, particularly when you're talking to children about their successes and their failures, but the messages, the interpretations that we offer to them. The way you lay out the furniture in the classroom makes a big difference to the way children behave. The way you mark their work, the way you write reports about them. Every aspect of schooling is either learning, what I call learning power positive, building positive dispositions to learning, or learning power negative. And teachers, I think, just need to become more aware, more conscious, more intentional about making sure that those messages are the right ones.
And do you think teachers are prepared for that big shift in the
I
school?
think if we can show teachers that what's required are small but sustained adjustments to what they're doing. This is not, you have to be different on Monday. I think we know enough from recent history to know that big initiatives like that tend not to be the most successful in schools. Like Friday you're going to be you're a familiar tiger, and on Monday you have to be an elephant. It's like gradually we adjust these small elements of teachers' work, and a lot of the work that me and my group have been doing is simply to discover these small things that when you tell teachers about them, teachers will go, oh, is that what you mean? Oh, that's not so hard. I could try that with my group tomorrow. And some of these things you can do just like that, and some of them require, like, they're more conscious habit change by teachers. And we know to change a habit, to change a dietary habit, takes a month or two in order to sustain, to embed that change, so it's just part of your nature. So what's needed is real clarity about the direction of this change for teachers, clarity by teacher trainers, and the right kind of continuous support that is both gentle but relentless, just constantly encouraging and requiring teachers to move in this direction. So I think it's a culture change process, and I think it takes a couple of years to make that shift in a school. But it's perfectly possible, and I think anything smaller than that, anything more glossy, probably is not going to work.
You set up a group, you said, so Institute of Research.
There are a number of people around the world that I work with in a more or less formal way. Many of them practitioners, some of them academics, some of them retired head teachers. So we have a large network of teachers, colleagues, co-researchers, just teachers in a little school somewhere in the countryside in Poland or in New Zealand or in Argentina, who are busy making the knowledge about what this pedagogical shift looks like. So I'm not one for building a big empire and having a fancy new building, but I am one for creating these networks of common desire to make sure that our children come out of school as powerful learners, not just as effective test passers.
Do you think it's important the collaboration between universities and schools, academic researchers and plain teachers?
I think it is important. My experience of working with universities is that often they're rather slow to move, and most of my research work, and I have to say my pleasure, having been an academic, having been a professor or working in universities for, 45, 50 years, I find it much more gratifying and much more practical, much more rewarding